Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I have a miniature homeschool haul to share with you. Some of these items didn't come in time from our previous homeschool haul, and some of these items are ones that we're using for our upcoming main lesson blocks. So before they get used up, I want to share them with you now. So this is the first book I want to share with you, and it's called Oceanarium. It's by Welcome to the Museum series, and we don't have an ocean unit coming up. However, when I was buying the anatomy book by the same series, I saw this one and it is so gorgeous. I decided to get it, and I do have intentions on how we can use this book in our homeschool with our main lesson blocks. And it's to use this in our opening activities where we could read 1 or 2 pages as part of our opening activities. Our opening activities are about 20 to 40 minutes. It's before we start our homeschool day, and it's generally a time that I reserve for some picture book reading or some games or something that's a little bit more enjoyable to sort of set the stage for our homeschool. Since we are now homeschooling just a middle schooler, I am not utilizing picture books as much in our homeschool, and picture books used to be a fabulous way for us to start our homeschool day. I would usually find a few that either coordinated to the main lesson that we were doing or things that might inspire learning for a different main lesson block that was coming up, or something that was review, or just something that was enjoyable. But picture books were a really big part of our homeschool for many years, and now that I just have a middle schooler, we're not utilizing them as much. So I thought that a book like this would be a great way, or I could use this book in this way of doing some lessons like this during our opening activities, or not really lessons, just reading aloud, but it's still rich content and beautiful illustrations. And since I have several in this series, I thought it would be nice to rotate through the books so that we're constantly engaged in something new and interesting that's still academic and educational. I have a few things that I haven't purchased in years and that we've rarely used in even more years. So we have 3 sets of posters, and I just want to say from now that we are going to be returning this poster set because it is not the quality and the illustrations that I'm looking for, but I still want to show them to you before I end up returning them. But the 2 that we are keeping, I realized are from the same publisher or manufacturer, and I realized that if this manufacturer has any more, then I'll definitely be happy to order from them, but I'm really not happy with the one that is for our chemistry unit. So I'm buying some posters, which I don't typically do, but I'm buying them because in part I'm not doing as many chalk drawings as I used to. Instead, I'm doing a lot of the work and illustrations in a main lesson book alongside my daughter so that she has an image that she can copy into her main lesson book rather than something from the chalkboard. It's taking less time to do the individual drawings, but we also don't have something that's beautiful on our chalkboard that sort of sets the stage for the entire main lesson block. So I thought some posters would be some nice decoration for the homeschool room. And I was actually really pleased with the posters from this set, the physics poster, and it's actually for high school, but we're using them for middle school. And what I liked about them is that they give us these main topic ideas in a way that's both illustrated and easy to refer to, and also gives you a little bit of a lesson at the same time. So I really like, for this particular set, I really like the way that it's set up. Now we've already started our physics unit, but it's an introduction to physics and it's very basic, and we haven't used any math in our physics so far. It's all observational. So this is going to be something that for the ones that don't require math, like the forms of energy, is something that we are going to be covering, but we haven't done anything with, actually, I don't know that any of these. Right, so this one, like speed and velocity, would include math if you were going to be working out problems with it. But right now, we're not using any math to work out problems. All of the lessons that we're doing for physics are demonstration based and observational based. So that we're still acquiring that information. We're still experiencing the physics before we lay down the math and the theories later on. So I like these Posters also because I have a little spot in our homeschool room. It used to be bigger before the renovation, but now we just have a little spot that's on the wall with a little shelf that is the space that is changed out every now and again whenever we're doing a main lesson block, where I can add something that's a little bit inspiring for that main lesson block, maybe a picture book or a game. And I just traded it out for our anatomy main lesson block, where I had something for our botany main lesson block in the past, a poster and a couple other books and things, and I just traded it out with an anatomy poster and some books. And I really liked the way my daughter responded to that space because it's right behind her desk, and she seemed really delighted by it and took the books off the shelf and wanted to play the game. And so that inspired me to find more posters that could inspire us as we move through some of these different main lesson blocks, which currently and for the next year are going to be a little bit more science heavy than they have been in the past. So that was the physics poster for high school. Before I show you the biology posters, I want to share with you the posters I got for our chemistry unit. And the quality is not as good in my opinion, although once they're on the wall, like I feel like it's fine, but the quality and the illustrations are just not my vibe for the types of lessons that we do, for the type of illustrations that I like, and for the type of decorations I want for our classroom. So it comes with a variety of sizes. So it has these smaller posters that are square and white background, and the illustrations just seem a little bit too basic, and there's no context for them, and it's just not something that I'm looking for. I feel like the ones for physics are a lot more high quality and present like actual work that you would find in a textbook, like theories and laws and like say graphics that you would actually find in a textbook, versus these ones seem like things that you would find in a really basic picture book that just didn't seem like it had a lot of content. That's just the way I see them, but this might be just right for your classroom or for your homeschool room if you want something that's a little bit more maybe more like a picture book or like animation. Then it comes with these posters as well, which loosely spell out science, and it's okay. It's not great. It doesn't spell out science correctly, but you get the idea. And I like that at least there's different varieties and sizes and shapes, so that if you see the listing, which by the way, you can find all of the links to these materials on the blog post that accompanies this video, and you can find several other homeschool hauls on that on that blog post, so you can see some of the things that we have previously purchased for the main lesson blocks for this year. And you can see on the listing for this the way they set up all of the posters, and there's sort of it's set up in a way that it all coordinates, so there's a reason behind it, but it just wasn't suiting us. Then you have the posters that actually give you some information for the subject area. So this is measuring matter, this is vapor. And the thing is that I like this, but this illustration is so simple that I might as well just do this one on my own, versus some of the graphics here, I feel like they aren't things that I would easily be able to draw on my own or add this much detail if I was doing it, or something like this. We're certainly going to have some of these things in our main lesson book as illustrations, but something that's this basic, I might as well just do on my own, either on the chalkboard or even my own posters, not in poster quality, but in say watercolor paper, to do something like this. Is not my style for illustrations at all. So since I don't like this, I would not want to put up the rest of the posters, but I like the content. The content I feel is very simple, it's easy to read and understand, and that's one of the things that drew me to this originally. But once I received them, and once I saw the rest of the graphics, and once I saw the quality of the paper, I wasn't as impressed. So the paper does have a slight shine to it, which is completely fine, but I prefer the matte finish of these posters. I also like the size of this one a little bit more, which is they're practically the same size, so it really doesn't matter. But this one's just a touch smaller. And then we have the rest of the posters in this series, which you can just see that they all coordinate together in color, obviously in the concepts that are being shared, because this is one subject area. And then the illustrations all have basically the same vibe. Like I really like this one quite a bit, but it's not enough for me to keep all of them. Unless I really cannot find another alternative for this poster set. So that would be the only reason why I might end up keeping that, is if I cannot find something else that I like better. But for all of these are ones that I absolutely wouldn't use, and so we would just be using these ones. All right, so let's get to the biology posters. And the second I opened up this poster set, I gasped because I liked it so much and I was so impressed with it. Now we've already done a botany unit, and we're in the middle of an anatomy unit. And so biology is going to cover some parts of physiology, some parts of botany. So it's going to cover more topic areas than we need at the moment, but this is nice for us to have for the future as well. So we have the animal cell, we have classifying living things, and we're not going to be using something like this at this stage in our homeschool, because I feel like these concepts are a little bit more suited for high school, according to the philosophy that we use using a Waldorf approach. This kind of classification tends to be later, after observation and experience is gathered by the student. Then we do the classification and the naming, the more intense naming, the scientific naming later. So if this might suit you if you're doing this at an earlier age, but these are the kinds of concepts that I would be using a little bit later. So the ones that we would be using now, the human heart, this is the one that's going to be going up first because we're still in our anatomy unit. And this poster on enzymes, I thought illustrated enzymes really well. It can be a difficult concept to understand, and I really like this graphic quite a bit. So we don't need this one right away, but it is something for the future. Classification of animals, we're almost ready to do this kind of content. We've already done zoology and botany, but we have saved classification for later. And then organs of the human body, this is something that I would want to set up as well, as part of our classroom decoration. And what I like about this poster that I realize is more available in older books so far that I've seen versus the newer books, is that it shows the human form, but it has modesty with the illustration. And sometimes you need something that's anatomically correct if you're doing something in anatomy that you really need that kind of specific illustration for. But what I've noticed is that for our needs right now, I prefer for at least half of the lessons that we're doing something that's a little bit more modest. And this fits for us. The new anatomy books that I have purchased recently have a lot more anatomically correct illustrations, even when it's talking about things that don't relate to that part of the body. And so for me, that's a little bit too much. So I appreciate a poster illustration that is suitable for me to hang up in the classroom. So this is not all of these posters are ones that we're going to be needing. I'm actually just going to start putting aside the ones that, let me just pull this one aside too, because there are a few that I want to set up in our homeschool like right away, because we're in the middle of that unit. And then there are things like the plant cell, for instance, that we've already gone over we haven't gone over the plant cell, we've gone over botany and plants, but we haven't done the things that are not visible just with our eyes. We haven't used our microscope yet for that unit. But coming up in the next year or so, maybe 2 years, these kinds of things are going to be the center part of our science education. Right now, we're still gathering all the information. We've already done the anatomy of a flower and all of its parts with our botany unit, but I love this poster because this is the kind of thing that I would find in a book but I would have to draw this on the chalkboard, which I have in the past. But having something like this means that I can circulate some of these illustrations and these graphics so much quicker and easier than writing a new chalk drawing. Although I was advised at one point that there is a way to reuse your chalk drawings if you are doing them on a particular kind of canvas that you can then spray and then roll up and then put out every time you're using that unit or doing that unit. Photosynthesis is another one that we've already studied and we will revisit again. And then here are the last couple of posters in this series. So I really like the quality for this one. Again, matte finish, really beautiful colors. The illustrations are appropriate for middle school and high school rather than these illustrations that are going over a very heavy topic. Chemistry is not a light topic, but the illustrations look a little bit more like, say, like baby, juvenile, very young looking. And I like that these ones are suitable for high school and of course middle school because they just have, they seem like they are from textbooks that are geared for that age or that grade level or that age range. The last item I want to share with you is this workbook by Carson Dellosa called The Human Body. I purchased this workbook to coordinate with our anatomy unit, and I decided that instead of using it during our anatomy unit, I'm actually going to use this after we have completed our anatomy unit because the workbook is it would be considered new learning for me because we haven't covered all of these topics. And usually when I use a workbook or when I use it for daily work, then I would want this to be something that my student has already been exposed to, or if they haven't been exposed to it, something that's simple enough that they can gather from the workbook itself. So when I'm choosing workbooks for daily work, I'm usually looking for workbooks that are about 1 to 2 grade levels behind. My daily work used to be just a single sheet of math and a single sheet of language arts that my students would do when they were younger, like say 4th grade or so. It might take them 10 minutes, maybe less, maybe 5 minutes. And then as my students have gotten older, the packets for their daily work have gotten more robust. So we include more math, more language arts, and sometimes we include other subject areas. So this workbook is going to be included in the daily work that my daughter is doing. So however many pages there are, however many days of the year we have left when we finally do this, I'm probably going to start this in a couple of months so that she'll have half the year to work on this. So it might just be a page a day or a couple of pages a week so that she can keep that information fresh from what we learned in our anatomy unit. And the workbook will also cover things that we might not have covered in our anatomy unit. So then it's a way just to make sure that that information gets covered. So we'll be using this a little bit after our anatomy unit, even though I purchased it for our anatomy unit, and I purchased it after our anatomy unit started because I had a different workbook that I thought I was going to use, but that one didn't work out. It wasn't the right kind of workbook. It coordinated with other material so it wasn't going to work out for us, and so I ended up finding this one instead. And I think that this is going to work really well for us, but it's going to work for us well after our anatomy unit is done. I have one more book. It's called Food Anatomy by Julia Rothman, and I have a couple of her other books. We have Ocean Anatomy and Nature Anatomy, and we really love these books primarily for the illustrations. I find that there isn't usually enough content to put together our lessons, and so I usually use these books as illustration, inspiration, with a little bit of information that's mixed in that we can add to our lessons, but usually I need a more robust book when it comes to information. Now I got this one for our anatomy unit, and I'm actually looking for a nutrition book that's quite neutral, that's not a diet book or not a lifestyle book, and that's not necessarily a curriculum. That I've seen a lot of nutrition books that are probably intended for a physiology class or anatomy class, and I'm not looking for something that's in that area of a budget, because these are several $100 books when it comes to a textbook on nutrition. So I ended up getting this one, which is this is not a nutrition book at all, but I thought this would work really well with our anatomy unit because I found it to be interesting when we did come across the information on food. that we could use in quite a neutral way. So it's not going to say, you should have this much protein or this many carbohydrates or these types of carbohydrates. But what I like about it is that since it does go into detail about aspects of food that I don't know that I would find in any other book, I thought this would make a great opening activity book that we could read as part of our anatomy unit, where we're reading a few pages together and enjoying the illustrations together, like what we used to do with picture books and illustrated books when my children were younger. This sort of takes the place of that kind of book, and that's why I ended up getting it. I am really pleased with it. I love the format of Julia Rothman's books, and so I'm used to her type of illustrations, which are the kind that I really like. I feel like they're all hand drawn. I can't say for sure because they're probably not literally hand drawn. They're probably done on a computer, but they evoke that hand drawn vibe that I like. And it just the style of artistry is the style that I like a lot. And then what I like about this too, as we plan to use it for our opening activities, is that it's a very quick read and you just get little nuggets of information and you get beautiful illustrations, and that seems to be enough for us. So I have to say that I actually already read a couple pages with my daughter, and it was really inspiring since we read the section on pancakes, and it did inspire us to look up a recipe on Korean pancakes so that we could try that as part of our breakfast or in our homeschool as well. I hope that you enjoyed this look at our miniature homeschool haul. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video, where you can find links to all of these resources. You can find the link to the blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're using these products in our homeschool, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.